everybody. Welcome to the Faith and Fandom podcast. So glad that you can join us. Today, I am joined by someone you've never heard of or met before.
Never.
This is Chris Poirier. Hi, Chris.
Hi, Hector.
Chris is a famous person that does gaming things in Southern Georgia. Also,
famous in Southern Georgia.
Famous in Southern Georgia. And he also hides from tornadoes.
I mean, we haven't had to lately, which is good, but oof. I mean, when we first got here, like a month into moving here 2 years ago, was their worst tornado here in like 2 decades. And it passed only a mile north of us. And my wife looked at me and went, "What did you do to us?"
Fair.
Yeah. Now just the siren goes off all the time and everybody looks at each other and looks up and is like, yeah, this is fine.
You're almost like Floridians. You're this close to Floridians in a hurricane.
Yeah, pretty much. And then people here call us when there's hurricanes and we're like, do you know how big of a state Georgia is?
You know what? People don't know how big of a state Georgia is because they think Georgia stops at Atlanta.
Right?
Like, I think
we're
that's
2 hours south of Atlanta and there's 2 hours south of me. Actually, it's almost 3 hours south of me.
I don't think the general public realizes how vast Georgia is because, you know, it's like I drive through Georgia on it. Like I just drove through Georgia for a camp and still I was like 4 hours north of you and still in Georgia. So it's a big place. So outside of like wellness checks and stuff, we haven't talked a lot since the pull list went on break. And you've just been like shucking and jiving with all of your stuff. And, you know, we've always, you know, since you've been moving there with the whole goal and things of church planting and a gaming ministry and everything else, give us like an update, like what's your vision for where you're going and what's actually happening?
Oh, wow. Yeah, it's like, so 2 years ago, we came down here with the goal of church planting and everything, and that's happened. We did start services for our church back in June. And that's about what church planting is. We're small but mighty is usually what I tell people. Only about a handful of folks so far, but the punch that we've had behind that is pretty. I'm unbelievably humbled by what church planting is to a church planter, which is everything. Congrats, you're in charge. You get to do everything. But we're going to have 2 baptisms in a week. And
awesome.
Right. So it's like, and I don't get me wrong for folks that know us that yes, every church is like, check the block that you're baptizing people. And that means you did something, that I'm not overweighing it. But at the same time, it means that we are reaching folks, and they're folks that we met through playing Dungeons and Dragons over a year ago and invited them to come read the Bible with us. And then boom, here we are a year later. And my dog's super happy to be here.
Yes. Striking, but your dog's starting an OnlyFans. Okay.
Yeah. Hey, make sure you connect our bank account. Yeah. So I just want to say that church planting is a lot of work. How I lost all my hair. Oh wait, no. But it's worth it. And for other folks, don't get discouraged by numbers because you're going to play to an empty room or what feels like an empty room a lot. When you're getting started. But if you're reaching that one person, you did the thing. And I'm not going to lie, the first 2 nights that it kind of felt that way in the room, my ego was just like, oh, this is going to be a long process.
There's a discussion that happens on my staff with about church planting because I planted a church like maybe a month after getting married. I wasn't the lead church planter or anything, but like we got recruited for a church plant because my wife and I were getting married, and she had been leaving a big campus ministry in ECU, and I was leading worship at a camp, and they're like, "Ooh, she's got administration skills and he can lead worship," and they're like, so they recruited us to do those things, and so we were part of that, and you know. But that was a church plant off of a like borderline mega church. like borderline. And that was its own thing. But then we planted in Pembroke in 2015, and dude, we had this conversation where we were talking with our church plant coordinating lead pastor person, and we were looking at spaces we could meet in, and the space that we fought for like we fought to actually meet on the college campus in the college's UC.
Mm-hmm.
That was the lofty goal of we're going to meet here. And like the university legal team, like blackballed us, like, or stonewalled us or whatever.
Yep.
They went around their elbow to get to their butts to find every legal reason to not let us do it. And it basically just boiled down to they just stopped returning our calls and started ignoring our paperwork, because they didn't have a actual defense.
Yep.
And so they just kind of pretended we weren't doing it.
I just don't want to do this anymore. So if I ignore the email, it doesn't happen.
Right. And that's what they were doing. And eventually they came to the point where we were given a space that at max holds 120, 150, like max. And one of our church plant lead coordinator was like, and it's one of the statements that gets brought up like once a month among our staff, is like, he said, this is too small. I can put 150 people here just with me. And like, I remember standing in the room looking at the guy who was my assistant for the plant, like, oh, he just did it. He just like brought the God saying, all right, I'm gonna humble your booty. And so like when we planted and with the few numbers and everything else, like I really felt like for a season, like God like kept that floodgate from opening simply because some people on our staff had the thought, I can do this without you. And
yeah, no, the space we meet in is a house of prayer attached to a coffee shop at kind of a parachurch organization here in town called Take the City. And they're really cool. They do a lot of unity stuff. It's who we do our outreach stuff with. So if you follow me on the Book of Faces or our church, you'll see that every third Saturday we do an outreach with a bunch of other churches. They're the organizer of it. And they've got a chapel. And of course, their goal is there's 4 other churches that meet at this place at different nights and all that. We almost cover 7 days a week between our 4 churches, which is kind of cool. But it's about 60 seats, but I can stream. It's got independent sound. It's all set up. It takes me 30 minutes and 2 banners to set up for church. And they basically set the rent at whatever we as the church can afford. Right. So when I tell people, it's like I pay X number of dollars a month and church occurs, and I literally just have to show up, and it's streamed online, and I didn't buy any of that equipment.
Fair.
Yes. And the rest of us are like, this is a great idea for a ministry in other cities to allow church plants a firm footing, because now 99% of my income can go to ministry, like literally, not a physical place, existence, salaries, or any of that. It can go into something else entirely. And I did the same thing. I was like, oh, I have 30 friends. Okay, that number is more like 5 to 10 friends. And I told a few of my friends, I was like, the first couple nights hurt. And that's when I it's like, right, but bro, it's not you. And if you don't need God, then he's going to firmly remind you of that reality.
I think that's one of the biggest reminders in church planting is like, if you're trusting anyone other than God to do this, you're going to get wounded.
Your pride is not going to be the only thing that is sacrificed on this altar. Mm-hmm. But what's been really great about it is our core work in our ministry in Columbus Got Game, which is what we decided. Well, I shouldn't say we decided, because we really followed the Holy Spirit on this one. We thought we were sent here to start a church, and I had a good, perfect little church set up in my mind of this is how I was taught, and this is what the Bible says. It's Acts 1:8 and Acts 2, and we're doing the church thing, right? That a local friend here was like, yeah, but you're a geek. What does any of that have to do with how God has gifted you? And I went, bro, what? He's like,
It's
well,
like
yeah.
you were trying to wedge yourself into the standard of what you just assumed you had to do,
Yep.
so that you could do what you wanted to do and felt led to do.
Right. And he was like, bro, I've been getting to know you. And he's like, that's a nice church you have there. It'd be a shame if the Holy Spirit broke it. And I was like, what? And he's like, bro, he's like, use who God made you. And I was like, I literally just spent the last 4 years in seminary having seminarians and friends tell me you can't do Geek Church, that it's too niche. It's, it's good for a project. It's for the convention stuff that you guys do occasionally. He's like, it's great for that, but it's not a church. And then
Your Sunday morning's not like geek though.
It's not though. And that's why I was kind of like, but what's the point here? And he goes, well, it sounds like your ministry is more important than the church right now. I kind of had that same response initially. You might want to unpack that one for me a little more so that I understand that we're actually saying the same thing. And he's like, well, you kind of learn that if you're following God, he's going to be opening the doors where he wants you to be going. He goes, and right now you've got a place for games, you have volunteers, the city's responding to you. People that don't want to have anything to do with church are asking you to do events. Which one of the two things does it sound like the Holy Spirit is opening the door for you on? And I was like, yeah, that's okay. He's like, this is where we mess up as pastors, is we go, no, this is the box that we've made in America for church. Get back in the box. And if you're not in the box, then you're doing it wrong. But then I had another church planting mentor that I've been matched up with recently be like, Chris, I've heard you talk about your services and everything. And he goes, what if I told you to do less of them? And I'm like, none of this makes logical sense. And he's like, right. He's like, but then he said the same thing. He goes, where's the Holy Spirit working? And so we've made some adjustments. We went from every Saturday to we're going to do every first Saturday a month to have a gathering. And the Columbus Got Game, we started construction on our physical space for a drop-in space to play games. So we'll have space for video games, tabletop games, and space that's 100% ours, 24/7, that I'm going to start offering other things through. Like we're probably going to start offering some Bible studies and other stuff through the space, because
your church eventually meet there.
That space isn't conducive to it, but it's literally in the same building as where we're currently meeting.
Okay.
Because, I slightly got ahead of myself in the story that this parachurch organization had 1,000 square feet in the end of the building they weren't using. And I was like, question. What are you using that for? And they're like, nothing, because we can't afford it. And I was like, well, cool. Chris doesn't have new building money, but Chris has remodel money. And they're like, yeah, let's do it. So we're remodeling the space. They're giving me free rent for like the next 4 years. Right. So I'm going to make about a $40,000 investment to create a space that's ours, that we can use in any way we want, that we're just going to have to pay electricity and internet on, basically, for 4 years. So yeah, some of it is just trusting that God is using you, even if you're not necessarily, on the pew Sunday morning. And well, we weren't Sunday morning anyway. We're a Saturday night church that try to help reach people that might not necessarily be able to make Sunday mornings. We have a lot of shift work folks in this town, retail type folks. So Sunday can be hard. And there's not a lot of Saturday options in town. So we wanted to be something available to other folks as well. And honestly, we just have our folks in the community weekly in some capacity, in either service, through food drives, through some of the rescue missions here in town, that we're just leaning in on the hands and feet thing, that gathering can come. And we're gathering in our homes with our Bible studies once a month, which means that the church is meeting. So we're just going to grow into our size and our service once we get to, the next step and a few more groups into having more public gatherings. So I don't know.
What does your funding currently look like?
My denomination, the Christian Missionary Alliance, does support a certain amount. Eventually that will go away.
Right.
So it's not a ton, but it is something, and something is good. Otherwise, a lot of it is just honestly from my wife and I, from years of doing different things. We were career feds before we came into ministry, that we just tapped into the resources that God blessed us with early in our professional careers to fund a lot of it ourselves, which a lot of people looked at us and said, that is incredibly broken, dumb, and stupid. Don't ever do that. And we're like, well, if we're living in God's economy, it's not ours anyway. And this is what we've been called to do. So when we say we're all in, we mean we're all in. So some of the folks, what's really amazing as part of the story is, like I said, we've got these baptisms coming that about 3 weeks ago or so, when they asked about baptism, like we just had this evening of, okay, I get it. Yes, Christ. Pretty sure that means I'm supposed to get baptized. And when do I start giving you money? And I was like, what is happening? And like, it was like in that order, almost that calmly. And it's like, I just kind of looked at my wife and I was like, this isn't how this works, is it? That the Holy Spirit just shows up and is like, this person suddenly gets it and you don't have to have any of the hard conversations. I'm like, that can't be how this works. But let me tell you, when God is doing things, it's really, Chris didn't do any of that. Because I was sitting there mentally preparing for, it's going to be really awkward when I tell a bunch of people that technically don't have huge incomes, please help. It's the thing you never want to ask people, but there's very biblical realities to it. And I'm not going to sit here and argue over the 10% thing or any of that garbage, but I mean, financially supporting the work of the kingdom.
Well, that's like the one I planted was a college church. And
because they have tons of money, right?
Yeah, that's the thing. It's like for like, the first 2 years I was there, it's like I had nothing but college students and people that came with me from my other church.
Yep.
Like that are already tithing there. I'm like, okay. Just like, so what does a more sustainable Columbus Got Game and River
Valley Church? Yeah.
I was like, is it city? Is it valley? What does a more sustainable version of that look like?
So a lot of it is going to be supported through, we're looking at a lot of grants that we now have access to. Columbus, Georgia has a bit of a crime problem at the moment. So anything that provides entertainment, education, etc. for students after school falls into crime prevention. And it took a while for my brain to realize that wasn't stretching something, that actually is 100% a valid thing. That if school gets out between 2 and 3 and mom and dad don't get home until 5, 6, 7, you've got usually 3 to 5 hours that a child is going to be unattended or not have something to do. And unfortunately, in an urban context, idle hands are going to do whatever they can to fill that time. So we wanted to start finding a way to provide a solution to that didn't cost anybody any money. By doing that, that means that we don't make any money, but it makes us suddenly very eligible for grants that fall in that crime prevention / education / after school space. And we've been exploring a lot of that. So we're working with local officials on that. I presented the entire thing to the mayor here and city council over the last month or so, and we're in a lot of different discussions because that is one of their biggest issues right now. Only 6 years ago, we averaged only about 20 homicides a year, and we're at 41 for this year, and 46 was the total for last year.
Holy
so
crap.
Our numbers are not going in the right direction for that one. And 3,
your city's rolling a 1.
It's a nat one, and it's um yeah, 3 kids 14 years old committed murder in my city last year. 14 separate incidents, not saying that all 3 14-year-olds rolled into it, like 3 separate 14-year-olds killed separate people last year. So when people ask us, they're like, what's your core demographic? I'm like, and so people are like, yeah, but what are you going to do? I'm like, we're going to play Smash Bros with them so that they smash video pixels instead of each other, because it's really that easy sometimes.
Charge beams, not gunshots.
Right. So, and I mean, where we're building this first location is in a neighborhood that unfortunately is befallen to a lot of this. So there are kids that can walk to us at our location, which is a big goal for us in the long term, is that hopefully this isn't the first and last. We're hoping this is the first of many that we can place in neighborhoods that provide an option for just drop-in space. I think will make a huge difference because they can find community in some place that's safe. And that doesn't cost a bunch of money, because unfortunately a lot of the other entertainment in this town is not cheap. I mean, even playing sports in a public school in this town isn't cheap, and creates a bar of access. Yeah, my face did that a lot too when people told me the cost of some of the sports in the public school system here. I was like, say what? I was like, cool. Well, then I'm going to do the thing that's really, how you build a business plan and give this away. But besides grants and stuff like that, our denomination also has some grants that we've put in for and everything, that right now, most of the paperwork I have out will pay back all of our initial investment. And that's not the worst. Because we figure, based on some stuff we've done, it'll cost us about 10 grand a year just to run the place. And that's not salaries or anything, which is not the worst either. And if I've got kids coming in between the hours of 2 and 6 p.m. Monday through Friday, I have everything before 2 p.m. and weekends that we could do other types of special events that I do charge for from the people that have money to have access to gaming space. Nice gaming space, because our goal is to offer a high-end product as well to people. So it's going to have the games available for people, but also we're leaning in heavily on esports. There's almost no organized esports, and we're the 3rd largest school district in the state. And have a college in our backyard that has esport athletes that get paid to attend there to play League of Legends and Overwatch. So you need to have programs that teach kids how to get picked up by those. Just like if you're going to make it playing football or baseball, you got to have played it in middle school and high school. Guess what? Video games are the same gig.
I don't know if you watched it, but did you see the HBO series Ballers with The Rock?
No.
Okay.
I'm aware of it.
Yeah. I love it. It's a little bit Any Given Sunday, a little bit this, that, all the football things.
Right.
But it's The Rock as a retired NFL person who's struggling with pain and addiction and decides to basically become Jerry Maguire.
Okay.
And then through the 5 seasons of it, it goes through all the layers of sports and junk to it's trying to Jerry Maguire athletes for 2 seasons. Denzel Washington's kid.
Oh, okay.
Do you know who he is? He was a Black Klansman.
Yes.
Okay, that's Denzel Washington's son.
Okay.
He's the main football player. He's the Cuba Gooding Jr. of the series. And follows him, all this stuff. But it goes from NFL to this to all sports to there's a season that kind of focuses on college sports and what's wrong with the ACC and everything else. And then there's a whole thing about covering NFL retired players' medical damages and stuff like that. They tackled all that stuff. Well, the last 2 seasons go over to esports, where it's Russell Brand runs a esports conglomerate, and The Rock's partner decides to take it over, and how all these things that you're actually creating pathways for ex NFL players to roll in there and compete and stuff like that, and they actually go to these League of Legends championships. It could be educational.
Oh no, it's been amazing, a lot of the research we've been doing in the space to make sure that we can be smart and help create a pathway for folks. And it's as easy as, no, just like any other sport, you have to teach kids what the rhythm of playing that sport looks like. And it's not sitting down in front of a computer and playing for an hour and a half after school. Sorry, kids. There is 30 minutes of practice. There are specific drills depending on the games that you play. And oh, by the way, esports athletes watch tape of their competitors, which literally made my head hurt the first time I heard that. But then I stopped and went, no, actually, I'm starting to get this, because yeah, it's all recorded. You can watch how other teams approach certain things, which means you can prepare for them. It's really mind blowing when you start.
Oh, it's turned into its whole own thing. So Nicky Barnes, the guy who edited Faith and Fandom Book 1,
Mm-hmm.
He's adulted his way beyond, working with that since, we got started. He just retired from being a teacher at 32, 1, 2, somewhere in there. He might not be 30.
This wrong?
Huh?
Are we doing this wrong?
He might not be 30. He could be somewhere in that bubble. But he's doing that because he managed to find his way into editing people's gaming footage for TikTok and YouTube and stuff like that. So he takes gamers and some NFL athletes, some different people, some online personalities that I don't know.
Yep.
But that's literally, he made enough to upgrade to one of the larger scale neighborhoods in our home. His wife quit working, and he just edit video game footage. He built a studio above his garage where he edits Fortnite footage and League of Legends footage, and that's about it.
Yep.
And I'm like, oh, okay.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
Where did I go wrong?
That's like, it's like I've edited footage forever. Like, I've done this stuff. I was like, never would have thought to get in on that. But it's just like, God opens some crazy doors for people.
And that's kind of what we're trying to do. Is I say that we're trying to be the catalyst for esports in the region, that we want to help schools understand what a team looks like, find the right coaches for them, teach them all these things that they don't understand currently. Because now there's a ton of academic research where there wasn't even a decade ago on the benefits of video games, these psychological impacts in a positive manner of video games. All of the research showing that no, they don't all result in violence, et cetera, et cetera. Or here are the things you do need to be concerned about. This is what the proper amount of screen time is for a particular person. Here are the types of things you should be doing when you're not looking at a screen to become better for when you are staring at a screen. It's really mind-blowing. And what's cool for us here in Georgia is Georgia Tech is basically the research hub of most of this, that there's an entire division at Georgia Tech that does nothing but esport. Physiological, psychological, all the research. They have an entire team, not like one or two PhDs are writing a paper and getting paid for it. They have an entire team that is dedicated to this space. And it's because Georgia is the home of esports in the United States. We make up over 1/3 of the entire US market for esports.
What?
Yeah, it's a $1.6 billion industry, and we're a little over 0.6 billion of it. Just in Atlanta alone, which we have 2 or 3 pro teams here, and then on top of all the schools and everything else. So, and then a ton of video game companies that Atlanta calls home that make stuff that sits in the space as well. So and then a ton of media companies, because normally people think Georgia and made in Georgia.
Yeah.
Well, all those same companies do esports and esport production and all that, kind of to your story with your friend. And so that's what we're trying to help schools understand, is it's not just we're saying your kid can be a pro video gamer. It's you need marketing people, you need videographers, you need graphic designers, you need video game designers, you need storyboard people. That, you know, this list suddenly becomes 50 long. They're all STEM related fields, and all the schools go, wait, roll that back and repeat that last part again. It's like, right, let's just start spreading the money around, and oh, by the way, please share some with me. So I've gone through the process of being verified and certified by the Varsity Esport Foundation as an esport club sponsor organization, which basically means that we can help be a positive influence in esports and how to set those teams up and find the pieces that we don't necessarily want to own it, but we understand that with 35,000 students in a school system, and we can have an influence here, and they have a college literally in their backyard that needs to recruit esport players. And they were champions in Overwatch last year. And nobody here knows that except people that are paying attention. So it's been my most favorite deep dive nerdy thing I've been doing over the last month and a half, because it is amazing how the breadth of the space, in that where it wasn't a thing tens of years ago and ESPN was making fun of it, that they're now carrying the stuff mainline. And they're like, if only we had paid attention 10 years ago. Because yeah, I'm sure they probably showed it in its context on that show, that the League of Legends World Champions Tour is usually to 100,000 person arena. And we're just not doing that.
Well, and if you're familiar with Alex Cross, the James Patterson detective,
yeah,
Morgan
okay.
Freeman played him.
Dang,
Tyler Perry played him. I read all of his characters' novels, and I want to say maybe 3 novels back, which would have been 2018, because he drops at least one a year. Was an esports thing where a murder investigation sucked Alex Cross into the world of esports competitiveness.
You can hear the voiceover. That sounds right. No, it's insane. And then even just looking at the actual pro athletes, a pro tournament usually is going to have a pot of over $1 million. Technically, there are some esport players that are making way more money than professional golfers.
Okay.
And I've been using that. Some people are like, wait, what? And I'm like, yeah, I understand that that's a broken comparison, but pro golfers make pretty good money.
Yeah.
Doing the one thing. Well, there's people picking up their mouse and clicking on things that are making more than them. Questions? It's right. Yeah, it's just wild. So that's part of what we're looking at doing. So as a result of that, we're going to have 12 computer positions in our drop-in space so that you can do 6v6, Overwatch, etc., because that's the biggest game currently in esports in terms of team size. And then we'll be able to, for schools that don't have access to it, literally be able to give their teams places to start, which is kind of our goal, is to get them into it so we can then show them how to pay for the tech that they need for their programs and whatnot. So it's a journey.
What about the non-digital side? Like, because I know you're also tabletop and dice and such.
Yeah, and that's just introducing a bunch of people to, you don't need to stare at a screen to have fun. We've been doing game nights every other Saturday since about January-ish. COVID, things kind of went back and forth when and how often we could do that and what was going on. But that's just been tabletop, introducing people to games that they probably never seen in their lives, and showing them that they're fun, they're easy. And our same goal is with the students is to make a cross section of games available. There's so many cooperative games out there now where everyone plays against the game, not necessarily one another, that are super fun, and also just pretty or have miniatures. Physical stuff just makes people happy, is what I'm finding. Is video games are fun and they're really cool to look at now, but there's some games that come out of the box that are just pretty freaking neat. With the art and the miniatures that come with them and everything, it's not just like flat cardboard anymore. And it's neat to show people that and watch their eyes get really big and go, this looks fun. And it's like, because it is. Adventure. And we've also found a community that just really wants to play D&D. Like, this town wants Dungeons and Dragons, and I can't find enough people to host games to satisfy the need of people that want to play. When we started offering it at some of our game nights a month ago, we might have had like 3 or 4 people playing. Last weekend, I had 15 people playing Dungeons and Dragons alone.
Well, you need to have a separate Dungeons and Dragons night.
So that's what's coming next is on the tabletop side is our goal is to make more of those events available. Once we have the space, it literally will be drop in, but we're going to start doing more events at different locations that feature different types of games. And we're partnering with some friends of mine in Michigan that have a pretty good sign up system for role-playing games that's free. It's called Guild, that you can literally create games and people can sign up for them or search for them based on a bunch of different things. So they can track dungeon masters they like or types of games that they like, and then just sign up for them, which is something a lot of us have been looking for in the gaming space. Of something that just allows you to sign up for stuff hasn't really existed. And they started it just to be for Ann Arbor, Michigan, and then they realized they had nerds everywhere that just wanted to use it, and they took the restrictions off and said, go forth and have fun. And I'm like, okay, gonna break it. And yeah, so our goals is to offer a lot of games, and we're getting to the point of I'm going to schedule 3 to 4 different dungeon masters, and some of these nerds like playing 3-4 times a week, and I'm not going to tell them no if that's what they want to do. So some of it is just creating structure where there hasn't been structure for the gaming community locally. So we're just serving as that space for a lot of folks, not just physically, but just literally that either digital structure so people can find games and know where to go, that we're kind of becoming the go-to for where can I go play this. And we're very happy being in that space. Yeah, it's been really wild what's been happening the last couple of weeks.
Awesome. Also, it was like just sparking like, I really do need to go ahead and start doing game nights at my church. It's my church. My church space really lends to it. So
sure. Oh yeah. No, and that's the thing is we don't have a church, so we don't do it in our space, but if we did, I would. And what I started doing 2 weeks ago, so I had a couple pastor friends like, hey, my youth are getting together during XYZ. Do you want to bring your setup? And I'm like, yeah, I'll be there. So I hung out with one of my United Methodist friends last week that he's been doing Thursday mornings, bringing the kids in for, he's like, bring your console and a monitor. He's got 2 kids that bring their entire PC. So there's video gaming, but then we had 10, 15 kids last week. I brought my game night set up because I just got 30 games and some tubs that I can drop anywhere. I was like, what you want to learn? Taught a bunch of games, played some Fortnite, did some of the flossing, and got owned by a bunch of youth. But
yes, as you would.
And then we dropped into Verdansk and did some of the Call of Duty-ness, warzoning in the afternoon, and again got dropped by a bunch of kids, but it was great. And I looked at some of my other friends and they're like, can you do that for us? And I'm like, yeah, but telling you since I got here, I can do that for you. So,
well, it's like, I'm honestly a little bit intimidated to actually ever have to compete against my daughter now. Cause like she's been playing Fortnite for 3 years, maybe. And I played it for about 4 minutes total. And like,
and you're like, man,
like, so like she'll go from like playing, and I put, we finally got her account linked onto our Xbox.
Right.
And yeah, so that was a thing. So we'll go from her doing that to me jumping into Crucible and Destiny. And I'm like, see, this is what grown-up games look like. And I'm like, not really. This is, I was like, this is just prettier than yours, but it's the same mechanics minus forts. And I was like, if you can do that, you can do this. Cause she'll look at Destiny and be like, well, that's intimidating. And I'm like, I watch you throwing up structures while you're trying to pew pew, and I'm like,
this
no.
might be easier.
Yeah.
Yep. I started playing Apex Legends again recently because I hated it when it first came out, because I was like, this is just the weapon balancing, everything. I was like, this is not Chris's jam. And then a bunch of my friends were like, but you've been playing Call of Duty League, which is core. And I usually only play hardcore so that if I like put a bullet near something, it'll die. So I don't have to think about it. But then started playing Call of Duty competitive is only core. So you have to be forced into using certain weapon classes and getting used to, bullet sponging somebody down. And I was like, okay, I'm getting pretty good at this, because the people playing League actually are trying to win and actually talking to each other and actually communicating and thinking about what they're doing. I was like, oh, Call of Duty's fun when people care.
Oh yeah.
And a friend of mine's like, dude, play Apex again. I was like, okay, reinstalled it, and like completely different, like winning every other game. And I was like, what happened? They're like, yeah, they rebalanced all the weapons and we saw you playing core and we had a feeling.
Well, it's like too, when you saw that when you saw me like asking Fortnite questions, you're like, oh, I'll reload it if you're playing. I'm like I only played Destiny when the Crucible happened. So it's just like, and that's only if I manage to click on it and it's happening. I don't even know when it's happening, because I got to the point I can't spend another $40 on another expansion of the same expansion of Destiny 2. I've paid for Destiny 2 enough times to buy an Xbox Series X.
I am convinced you're getting old for Xbox world is I have not bought a new game since sometime last year because everything I care about playing is on Game Pass. Or I'm willing to wait for when it will show up on Game Pass.
Well, I haven't done Game Pass because I'm not a multiple game player. I'm like, you give me a game, I'm going to play that game through completion. I'm going to shake hands, say farewell, and go on to the next one. I'm not like, I don't put multiple irons in the fire like that.
Well, this is the thing though, is I only install one at a time and I play it through to completion, because if I don't, I suffer from video game ADHD and I will start a billion and never finish any of them. So I found out the adultism in me is that I can only download one.
Well, and like it threw me off so bad. Like I was at my local GameStop buying Funko Pops and pre-ordering stuff, and I was like, "There's like, is there anything you need to pre-order?" And I'm like, "Have I paid for Halo yet?" He's like, "Don't. It'll be on Game Pass." I'm like, "What?" I was like, "Did you at GameStop, where this is your job, tell me not to pre-order the new Halo game because it's going to be on Game Pass? Did you just do that?" Like, because that's super counterintuitive, like to you having employed. But yeah,
it was really awkward because Outer Worlds was that way. And that was during my stint working at GameStop when Chris was at how did you pay for church? Yeah, Chris worked at GameStop for a Christmas season. So I could finally say that I did and see how the other half live. And yep, that was educational. But yeah, like having to look at people with an Xbox knowing that they have Game Pass and be like, yeah, pre-order this. You're totally getting it for free. But
how much is Game Pass, by the way?
It's what, $10 a month if you just get it as it, or $15 a month? I definitely get my money out of it, because if, like I said, you download 2 AAA titles a year, you've paid for it. And it also now has the EA Pass in it, which I was paying for both because EA Pass was worth it before. So now the entire EA catalog is in it, for free. And now pretty much all of Bethesda, I'm just like, yeah, I'm just going to live here now.
That's a rabbit hole I don't want, but like
I
like to just have a campaign game, but I also know that I get into some multiplayers and I have an affinity for Halo, so I will probably jump in that a little bit. But I've got like 4 books that I want to have done before October. So
I mean, that's fine.
Halo's like December though, isn't it? Or is it October?
That's a good question.
Either way.
Soon.
Well, I know that the Far Cry 6 is soonish too.
Man, I just want to play all the games.
I do.
I don't have time to play all the games.
I'm starting on Skyward Sword again, like because we got it for the kids because they loved Breath of the Wild, and it's just like I'm old. I can't remember how to get my stupid bird back on the first level. It is what it is. So outside of your church, outside of Columbus Sky Game, what else is going on in your world?
Man, that is our world for the most part. Because church planting a full-time job, starting another nonprofit is a full-time job. So that means I have 2 full-time jobs. It means I'm playing video games and reading comics in the space that I am provided, which isn't a lot.
You want to share pics of backlogged comics to read before?
I wish I could, but like we were saying, when we hit record or before we hit record, I haven't. My backlog is bad.
I've got it. I sent Todd Turner a picture of my backlog because I've to help me stay on it. All of my backlog comics are in a crate in my trunk or in the back of my car. So because I'm traveling around all these camps and everything,
right? So you can read.
So I can read and like I've traveled with these same like 60 comics to Florida, 2 weeks in Alabama, and next week they're going to Pittsburgh, and I've managed to read like 8 comics.
I mean, I guess I could do that because the one thing I worked into my life to try to create, like, slow your video game brain / doing things at 1,000,000,000 miles an hour down, is my wife and I stopped watching television after like 8:30 at night, and we read now. And I'm gonna tell you, that definitely changed my sleep patterns and just my brain. So I guess that's another Chris is getting old thing, that it's like that. Yeah, if you don't stare at a screen before bed, you can sleep. Yeah, it's kind of true. But as a result, I've read 38 books this year so far, and I think I read 2 last year. And maybe only 4 of them were like church books. I've read almost all of Star Wars Del Rey this year. My goal is to finish it by the end of this year, but I've mixed in some other nerdy, geeky stuff. And I've made the complete, utter fail of finally starting to read D&D books from Once Upon a Past that I will never complete because of how many billions there are and that they're all like 900 pages. But I'm like, okay, if I'm playing all this D&D, I guess I should actually get some of this lore stuck in my head, make me a better DM. Because Salvatore and all these other dudes just write amazing, vivid stuff. So I guess I'm like, it's enjoyment, but it's also research.
Yeah.
Does that count?
It does. That's like that's what I do with anything. Like I'm taking notes and paying attention. So what do you got in mind for like cons and conventions and events with what you're doing?
Not sure yet. I mean, obviously we probably will. I mean, the biggest, soonest thing for us is we're probably going to help our community throw a con in the next 2 years. They haven't had anything at all, really, or they've got a dude that has done a very small thing, very limited space, but it's been good. So it's a handful of vendors, so you can dig through some long boxes. You've got people with collectible toys and stuff, but it's very small in comparison to some of the stuff that we've done in the past. In the Civic Center and Trade Center space that we have here in town is actually great. And because they're trying to find ways to fill the space, if I come in from the Civic side of it, we don't got to pay for it. So I was like, hey, Chris used to do this stuff. You guys want to talk about it over the next couple of years? And they're like, yes, please. So that, I think, is how we're going to kind of love on our community, is by expanding the nerd community, by giving them an event. Because otherwise, I mean, it's 2 hours for us to go to MomoCon, DragonCon, etc. So it's kind of like, yeah. And we're looking at doing virtual events through Columbus Got Game as well, learning from our friends at Love Thy Nerd and Satellite Gaming that we'll probably be doing something under the banner before the end of the year.
Sweet, dude. So I saw you've got some sweet merchant stuff recently and things. What do you want people to follow, or where do you want people to go in terms of check us out, buy these things, click these buttons? Where do you want people to go with that stuff?
So gotgamega.com is Columbus Got Game. That links to all of our social medias and everything. So that's probably the best place for Columbus Got Game. For the church, it's rivervalleyga.com. And that both of them have ways to donate. Both are obviously 501c3 to support. And we're trying to get lists going for those. So if you want to see newsletters, etc., we're going to start spinning some of that stuff up. But on Columbus Got Game, our Facebook and Instagram are definitely our primaries. And otherwise, I am pretty much everywhere as at CGPOIRIER on literally almost all of the socials. And you can find all the things. And yeah, we just partnered with an awesome dude for merch, and I'm like super excited.
Is it local? Is it online?
It's a bit of everything. Skulls is located in Macon, Georgia, which is about an hour and a half from me. But it is a Georgia-based company that happens to be run by some really solid believers whose goal is to provide the esports community with really epic merch and just be the dudes in the space. And their entire organization was born out of a college gamer group that used to have LAN parties back in the day. Skulls was, their clan tag and all that stuff back in the day. They still play together, and they're like, their whole thing is anti-toxicity in video games. So, no raging, no swearing at people, like actually having a good time and enjoying the hobby of video games. And the owner's like, well, I want to make really sweet merch that people can get on demand or in bulk. So all of our stuff's on demand. So I don't have to meet minimums or any of that kind of stuff. And also it not suck. Like the quality of their stuff is really top notch. So really excited to be doing stuff with them, and they're supporting a lot of our efforts here indirectly, but also directly.
Okay. Sweet, dude.
Yeah, Skulls is awesome. Definitely look them up. They've got great stuff under their own brand, but they also make jerseys for a lot of other nonprofits, but also for a bunch of pro teams. So
sweet. Then you and I are gonna get back into the world of comics, and
yeah, we're gonna read the backlog because LTN's gonna make us.
Well, we don't even have to read the backlog. We can just say this is
right,
when we're starting with.
Shh, don't give away trade secrets.
I was gonna say, because like some of this stuff, like I bought some books to, like support local shops, and I'm just like, I don't know if I ever actually want to read this.
Yeah.
Like,
yeah.
But yeah. All right, man. We'll wrap this up for now. But how can we be praying for you specifically?
Just the finishing of the construction. We're really hoping we can open our drop-in space, late September, so we can coincide with the school year this year is really our hopes. So just that, so far so good. But you never know. Code officials can be special. So just cover that in prayer that things continue and that we'll find some favor in at least one or two schools to try to start some programs so we can really start demonstrating what we're here to do. And that in turn, a lot of that will start bringing people to look at our church organizations, because that so far is what has happened is people are like, oh, wait, I thought all Christians suck or whatever. And you guys kind of don't. And then we just start reading the Bible together and people go, this makes sense. I just want to pray that that continues and that people have kind of their hearts and minds open to that reality that, guess what? This isn't all mutually exclusive. You can do these things and enjoy them. And guess what? You can even do it to the honor of God, which is mind-blowing to a lot of people.
Yeah.
So I definitely want to be able to lean in on all of that and help folks celebrate that.
Sweet. All right. Well, you'll be able to find, if you're watching this on Facebook or YouTube, you'll be able to find the stuff in the comments. If you're listening to this, it will be in the details on the podcast show notes as well. Chris, thanks for hanging out with me for the first time ever. And it was definitely nice meeting you.
Oh, it was a pleasure. My pleasure. Thank you for having me.
Oh, absolutely, man. I was just like, it's like, I know it sounds lame, but like with the way our schedules work, it's hard to actually sit down and talk to each other if we're not doing
it. So we're just going to record it for everyone else.
Yeah, that's it. It's just like, that's like, if we're going to have an hour-long conversation, let's just go ahead and
record it.
A podcast.
We did it.
We did it. And then all the juicy stuff is in the before and after.
Yep.
But thank you so much for being a part of the Faith and Fandom podcast. And we hope to hear from, or I don't know. I'm so out of practice. I don't have taglines anymore.